I want to ask you, when Donald Trump's team, when the government arrested a sitting judge and paraded her before the cameras, what were you thinking writ large about our justice system at that point?
Sides of this argument have a major problem. On the one hand, people who are in favor, the challengers here, the people who are in favor of nationwide injunctions, it's obviously an example of judicial overreach. District court judges, there are 700 of them or so.
But as the Chief Justice of the United States said publicly last week, the rule of law is endangered. On his first day in office in January, this president
country spread across 94 federal districts. They are supposed to decide the case before them as to the parties before them. And it really does offend Title III sensibilities for judges, individual judges, to be making decisions.
It all started when Trump tried to claim absolute immunity from punishment for actions taken while in office, which was seen as extreme and unusual by lawyers of all types. His lawyers said that a president shouldn't be punished for things they did while in office, no matter what the reason was or how they affected. Another way to say this is that Trump was asking the court to protect him, all presidents, from any legal claims linked to their official action. Before we move on, I'd like to ask you a small favor. If you appreciate this content, please take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Over 98% of you watch the videos without subscribing. It costs you nothing, but it makes a huge difference to us. So, did you click the subscribe button? Great, thank you so much. Now, back to the video. There is a lot at stake. At the heart of the case is Trump's attempt to change the results of the 2020 election, especially the events that led to the riot in the Capitol on January 6th.
Essentially declared war on the federal judiciary, the Constitution, and the rule of law. And for every day since then, until this day, the president himself.
That applied to the entire country. On the other hand, if we got rid of these nationwide injunctions, as you just heard in those snippets you played, chaos would follow. How would we possibly take birthright citizenship? Why should a baby born?
The argument to the Supreme Court directly, most recently, urging the Chief Justice of the United States.
In the Eastern District of Pennsylvania and Philadelphia have one status, but a baby born in New Jersey have another status. Who's going to track it? So both sides have really deeply entrenched problems with their positions here.
If the court rules in Trump's favor, it could set a precedent that makes the president almost immune to the law. It's possible that Trump will lose his legal security and have to go through a speedy criminal trial right before the election, which would be very bad timing. That being said, Trump was shocked by how far the court would take his case and how quickly the legal establishment and even some of his supporters would ignore what it meant. By making the problem so clear, Trump has put the Supreme Court in a tough spot. They must either uphold the risky idea that presidents can break the law without getting in trouble, or they must reject, which would make Trump directly criminally responsible. During the formal arguments, many of the judges, including some that Trump chose, seemed uncomfortable with how broad his claims were. Justice Amy Coney Barrett asked if someone who killed a political opponent would be protected by the law. Justice Brett Kavanaugh asked if the president's power would still be limited in any way. The courtroom went silent when Justice Neil Gorsuch asked in public if Trump's way of thinking could coexist with constitutional responsibility. Legal experts say it's ironic that Trump rushed the pick of conservative justices to make sure that the court would be ideologically conservative. Now, that same court won't accept authoritarian arguments on his behalf. He created a monster he thought he could control, said one person who works in the legal field. However, the members of the Supreme Court
down, at least preliminarily, if not ultimately, every single signature initiative of this president during his first 100 days in office. Now, that's not retaliation.
If you're trying to sort of game out how might this decision come down, first of all, I think Trump's going to lose ultimately on birthright citizenship. I think his position departs too far from the way we've looked at that for 157 years. Every judge who's considered this lower court judge, regardless of ideology, has rejected that position.
The federal courts are interpreting and applying the Constitution of the United States and the laws of the United States to the clearly unlawful.
But the real ball game here is those nationwide injunctions. It's clear the three liberal justices are going to be against Trump on them. It's clear Alito and Thomas are going to be for him. So the ballgame is, can you, if you're on the liberal side, get two?
Are not on his personal defense team. They need to keep their traditions alive. The bad things have already begun. While the justices argue, Trump's poll scores are going up and down in key swing states. Voters who were already wary of his uncertain leadership style are even more so now that he wants to change the rules for American democracy. Independent voters, who are very important to any presidential win, are starting to feel uncomfortable. Recent polls show that more and more people are unhappy with his legal strategies and his failure to take responsibility. Republicans in Washington, D.C. are split on this issue. Trump's claims about deep state persecution and witch hunts are being repeated by some, who are making his claims stronger. In secret, some people are worried that linking the future of the party to Trump's legal survival would fail. If the Supreme Court rules against him, we'll have to defend the undefensible, a Republican senator said in private. A whole generation of moderates will also be lost. Democrats, on the other hand, are working on their speeches and making the problem sound like a moral choice for the country. Most of the time, President Biden has been quiet in public. However, his campaign has started using phrases like "nobody is above the law" and "protecting democracy" in advertising and talks.
As you suggested, was really the beginning of the culmination of this war on the federal courts and the rule of law. Judge Duggan did nothing other than...
Well, I think ultimately birthright citizenship is going to be upheld. I mean, there doesn't seem to be much sentiment on the court to adopt the Trump position on birthright citizenship. However, the issue of nationwide injunctions, which is a big issue, was
show a litigant in front of her out a side door that led directly into the public hallway in front of her courtroom, rather than have that litigant exit.
Is a good idea. So how do you differentiate between cases? I mean, you don't want to have a situation where, you know, you have birthright citizenship in New York but not in Texas. It should be one rule for the country.
If the Supreme Court rules against Trump, Democrats will probably flood the media with stories about how bad things could get for America's laws. Some people on the right who back Trump don't seem to know how to talk about this. As some people start to speculate that a narrow ruling might be wise, others are quietly wondering why Trump didn't choose a more common legal path. The growing conflict within the group shows a deeper truth. This is not just a legal disagreement, it's also a test of how far one person can push the system before it fights back. One of the most shocking things about this is that Trump did this to himself by insisting that the Supreme Court support the idea of unchecked presidential power. He gave the justices a chance to set the limits of executive power for future generations. If the judge doesn't believe his claims, it could be the clearest legal criticism of Trump's rules so far. If they let them in, the republic might never look the same again. At the moment, the country waits. But one thing is certain: Donald Trump is already in a tough spot, even if the court doesn't rule in his favor. It will affect more than just the courts. It will affect the very core of America's political future, whether he is able to get out of it or fails because he went too far.